Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Together, Jake and his friends interview talents varying from actors, directors, writers, producers, composers, puppeteers, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chris Bixby, and with me today are other co-hosts, Wyatt McCullough, Matt Bingel, and our host, Jake Deffinbaugh. How are you guys?
Hello, really great. How are you?
How you doing?
Very good.
I am very good as well. Who do we have today, Chris?
Today, we have a writer who has worked on shows like Stanley, JoJo Circus, Word World, and
even developed shows like Pocoyo.
Yes, that's right. And he also worked on a show that is coming to Disney Plus next month.
Woo!
Popular Playhouse Disney show Bear in the Big Blue House, among many other things. And he's Andy Yerkes. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Happy to have you on.
Happy to have you here.
Definitely. So to start this off, we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to introduce yourself?
Sure. I mean, like you said, I've been head writing, producing, and writing for TV and mostly kids TV for 30 some years now.
Wow.
And I think I've been the head writer on something close to 700 episodes of television.
Wow.
And just been doing it for a long time. I love the work most of the time. I mean, it's I've been very lucky. I've been able to write for a living for all of that time and raise a family and have a house, and it's been a great ride so far.
Nice.
I bet it has.
We're here.
Can you talk about your background and how you grew up?
Sure. I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana. I grew about 35, 40 minutes outside of Chicago, outside of the Loop. I grew up, in a town called Munster, Indiana. My parents were both school teachers. My dad was the head basketball coach at my high school. I played for him, and Indiana basketball is pretty serious. I mean, I grew up. My parents were both the first people in their family to get college educations. The rest of the people in both sides of the family were either worked for the railroad or were farmers. So I spent a lot of time in the country on farms and stuff when I was a kid, with lots of animals, which maybe is why I ended up writing for Animals That Talk so much. And then I went to college in Indiana, and then came to graduate school in New York City. I was a graduate student in the fiction writing program at NYU, and I had I wrote short stories and stuff, and I had really no aspiration to be a television writer. It just sort of happened. I was writing stories, working on a book, which I still have 500 pages sitting around for me to finish. And I was writing for a theater company, it was Jumbo Pictures. I was writing for theater. I was writing for a theater company called Naked Angels, and Jumbo Pictures came. People from Jumbo Pictures got invited to a sort of a theatrical benefit that I co-wrote, and some of the stuff I wrote was kind of, intentionally cartoony, and it was starring the scene that I wrote that got me a job at Jumbo Pictures was a scene that starts Severio Aguero. I don't know if you guys ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Heard of it.
Yeah. Severio is this guy named Java Joe. He's his character on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Anyway, and the people at Jumbo came and asked me to first. I wrote some episodes of Doug. first couple episodes of Doug, and this is when Doug was still on Nickelodeon. But
Yeah.
I wrote a couple episodes with Doug with a person named Ken Lonergan, who's now won. He's an Oscar-winning writer and director.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Wow.
Still a very close friend of mine, and he and I were writing partners on a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
You know, I mean, it just sort of proceeded from there. I got my, Bear was my first head writing job.
Yeah.
Which, in '96.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and I, Mitchell sort of pulled me. It was interesting. He had like what they did something called 5 test pilots. They hired like 5 writers to write, like essentially write versions of the show. There wasn't really much about the show at that point. I mean, we had seen the Bear, we'd seen some of the puppets a little bit, and I wrote the first episode that I wrote was the Gravity episode.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, because I came last to the drawing, so I got what was left, and all that was left was Gravity. And I wrote Why Bears Can't Fly, and Mitchell chose me out of that sort of stack of writers because he, I guess, liked my version of the show the best.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a very quick run up from my childhood to writing for Bear. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what got you into writing?
I just always had a sort of I was always, had creative inclinations. I was one of my very close friends growing up was a guy named Tom Morgan, who I created a bunch of comic book characters with, and mostly I would write and he would draw, but I also drew some. He ended up being an artist for Marvel Comics.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. For many years, he was the artist on Captain America, the artist on Iron Man, and then he eventually and is still an animator for Disney. He's
Oh my
Very
God.
cool.
whatever the current iteration of Mickey Mouse is, he's working on it.
Yeah.
And he's an animator and director, very, very, very talented artist, great guy, still a very close friend of mine. And then one of my other close friends was a person that we were sort of made comedy tapes and things together growing up. And he ended up being a movie director, and then I got him into kids writing. And since then, his name's Craig Carlisle, and he and his wife are actually staying up here right now at my house with me. They're not here right now, but he ended up being the head writer on. He wrote for me first of all for shows like Word World and
Yes.
Mama Mirabelle and
Yes.
Yes.
Great shows.
and shows like that. And then he sort of got started in kids writing, and he recently has been the head writer on Pete the Cat for Amazon, and
nice.
and also the new version of Thomas
Oh.
wow.
for Mattel.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I also had, my father was not only the head basketball coach at my high school, he was also the head of the English department.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh, nice.
so I was always surrounded by people that were interested in reading and writing, and good writers, good readers. As I got a little bit older, I sort of, branched out and was not so interested in writing about, the superheroes I made up anymore, but was more interested in writing short stories and that kind of stuff. And like I say, I went to graduate school at NYU in the fiction writing program, the master's degree. And, I was, and I was writing for that theater company, and, thinking of becoming, somehow someday making my living as a fiction writer, which is kind of a hilarious thing to think you're going to do. But I was, I had a day job as a speechwriter for the Environmental Protection Agency, and did that for several years. And then once the sort of the TV writing thing, Sorry, somebody was texting
It's
me. Sorry
fine.
about that.
No worries.
But once the TV writing thing started to sort of take off, I quit that job and did it full time, and that was over 30 years ago now. So
Wow.
There you
I
go.
think
Nice.
it was over 30 years ago. Yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. And for there were some years where I was where I was head writing 2 shows at a time for PBS, or that's the reason I didn't do subs. I did the first season of Pocoyo and helped them to develop it, and then afterwards they it took them a really long time to do a second season, and that Pocoyo's had a life for, I mean, that was like 2005, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2005.
Yeah, Pocoyo has had a life. It's just continued and continued since then.
Oh,
But I
yes.
was on. They asked me to come back, and I was unable to do it because I was head writing both on Word World and on Mama Mirabelle at the same time. And
Wow.
so so 3 would have been too many. And I
Definitely.
suggested a guy who, maybe, I don't know if you guys have heard of, Ken Scarborough, who's for quite a
Yes.
few years now has been the head writer for Sesame Street. A very a guy that I've known for a really long time, and a great, very talented head writer. I suggested they use him, and I think he did it for a couple more seasons, and then they came back to me again in the 4th season, and I was just engaged. So, but I mean, Pocoyo, I'm incredibly proud of Pocoyo. I love that show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing
that's
show.
right up,
That's
Yeah.
what
right
I
up
grew
there,
up with.
right up there for me with Bear, as far as the
Nice.
as far as the quality. And I had a big hand in both of those shows, so it's a big source of pride.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Awesome. So getting into that field, who were some of your inspirations?
Into the field of writing, or the field of generally, or the field of television writing specifically?
We can go
Oh.
writing in general.
Well, I mean, I had a lot of inspirations. I mean, it depends on when you're talking about. One of my earliest
Right.
inspirations, as far as actually, becoming a sort of a serious writer, was Ray Bradbury. I loved Ray
nice.
Bradbury's. When I was sort of, late middle school, young and into high school, I read a lot of Ray Bradbury. My father actually was taught a freshman English, advanced English classes that read Fahrenheit 451. So I'd known about Ray Bradbury for a long time, and I picked up his short stories, and I just found them really amazing. And he wrote with such joy. That's one of the things that really, as far as writers that I like, that's the kind of thing that I kind of really hook into. And then later, when I was in college, I was an English major. I mean, and before college a little bit, I started getting into, more sort of what people would call, I guess, not me, but some people would call more sort of serious literature, obviously, like Joyce and Nabokov and writers like, tons and tons of writers. John Cheever was a huge influence on me. And
Oh, nice.
as far as like, and as far as, the TV stuff goes, I just was always like, I'm big on, giving something a story, a narrative, even if it's something incredibly simple.
Right.
And there were shows, especially around the time when I was doing Bear, that didn't really do that. And it was like, frankly, kind of discouraged to attach too much of a narrative to something, especially something that was a half hour long or whatever, because that would be the sort of conventional wisdom at the time was that kids couldn't really follow a story that was more than 5 minutes long, which I just sort of knew was not true. I mean, but there was a sort of an educational movement that was, because at that time, the other things that were sort of, big in the culture as far as kids programming were like Blue's Clues and
Richo.
Dora the Explorer.
Amazing show.
But
Both
but
amazing shows,
and I knew the people working on them, but from my
Nice.
point of view, they didn't really have stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't really have, they were kind of more workbook shows, which is great. It's just not the kind of thing that I would want to write.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, that's how I sort of came up, and that's sort of been my calling card, from then on, is, things that have a kind of a bit of a narrative through line, even if it's a simple one. I mean, when I first started writing for Bear, there wasn't really anything like that. It was just sort of Bear wanders around the house. I mean, this is what existed.
Mhm.
I don't know if you like watch something like the Water episode. I think it's probably like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where Bear just sort of
Yeah.
wanders around the house and goes from room to room.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
talks about different things about water. But what I sort of added, I had these sort of a couple of narrative models in my head for what you could do with Bear. And the first one I did was I sort of fixed my gravity script, because I was like, well, what does a parent do? Like what?
Yeah.
And I wasn't, and it was, I had two sort of ideas, main sort of story models. You can almost look at any of the episodes and pair one of them with it. One was what I called Barus Interruptus, which was Bear had some idea about something that he wanted to do, and
Okay.
he's trying to do it, and every room he walks into, he gets sort of sidetracked by the kids, right?
Mhm.
Like with Gravity, it ended up being, and that was the first one I sort of came up with, was just very simple. The otters want to play catch with him, and he's going through the house looking for the mitts and the ball.
Yeah.
And as he's doing that, he runs into Ojo, he runs into Tutter, he runs into Trilo, and then at the end he's able to play catch with the otters, and which is again, something that is an example of Gravity working. The ball goes up, the ball comes down. And then any of the stories, I mean, the very first episode that aired, which I also wrote, was called
Yes.
Home is Where the Bear Is.
Amazing
Yeah,
episode.
Yeah, which was really built to be the first episode, and it was very simple. I mean, it was just Bear's trying to give a tour of the house,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and and show the kids at home, hey, this is my house, this is the Big Blue House. And of course, each room he went into, there was some different scene playing out that had something to do with the idea of home. So yeah, and the other story model was something I called Bear Stacking BBs, which is that the first one is Bear's trying to do something for him, kind of for himself, where he's going around or trying to do something that something like just one task, like there's one called A Winter's Nap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where Bear just wants to go. It's winter and he's a bear, so he wants to go sleep for a little bit, and he's trying to do that, but everybody keeps
Waking him up.
kind of dragging him, waking him up and dragging him downstairs for some. So it's kind of it was the idea, and Mitchell had said very early on that the idea was to sort of do an anti-Barney, like a version of like a character that had a similar kind of appeal, I guess, in a certain way, but also was something that parents could watch and sort of go, oh yeah, that's my life. You know what I mean? I recognize that. He can't,
right.
He can't, he can't do anything for himself, but he's always, he's forever like patient and kind and all that stuff. And then the Bear Stacking BBs one is one where he's trying to get everybody together to do something, to do some group activity, and
like clean up
and
the
they
house
are
or
all
something.
clean up the house or go on a picnic, or there was a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And they keep they keep having their own things and running off, and finally he succeeds in the end. So it's very simple, but it gives you something to sort of pulls you through. Whereas for my money, if you just watched a bear going from room to room talking about whatever, in each room there was a scene about gravity, it kind of would make your eyes cross after a while. You know what I mean? At least for from my point of view. But so yeah, and we did 117 of those, and it was a pretty good. It was a pretty good. It laid down a pretty good framework for those episodes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sure.
So yeah, it was interesting. It was a long, interesting haul. The first season, Kevin Strader and I don't know, were the only two writers for all 26 episodes.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a pretty quick, it was a pretty quick turnaround having to write those. We had to write them pretty fast. So it was kind of like being on a lifeboat together. And then the next season there were 39 episodes, and we actually had two more writers.
Right.
Claudia Silver, who I'm sure heard her name. And she's worked with me on just about, Kevin's worked with me on a lot of stuff too. Claudia's worked with me on, both of them worked with me on just about everything I've done in one form or another.
There you go.
So I can talk, obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah, awesome to hear. So, one of your earliest writing credits was Nickelodeon cartoon Doug. What was it like working on that?
Well, like I said, I was paired with Kenny Lonergan, who ended up being an Oscar-winning filmmaker, director, writer.
Yeah,
right.
He and he and I, we just had fun. We had a lot of fun writing those things and sort of, yanking each other's chain and trying to come up with jokes. And, it was fun. We were, I think, 2 episodes, and I believe, I'm trying to remember who's the head writer then. I know Ken Scarborough was working for them. I know Joe, what's his name? Joe was working for them. It was a nice experience. I ended up working for Jumbo Pictures, my first staff writing job before I did any head writing was on a show called Allegra's Window.
Yes.
amazing show.
For Nick Jr. And that was my first sort of like real, sort of TV staff writing job.
Yeah.
And that was a good experience. And it kind of, I had a great head writer on that show named Barry Harmon, who'd done lots of TV in the past and was on the Carol Burnett show,
Oh wow.
like Maude, and shows like that, from classic shows like that from the 70s. And he always said that the kids writing, the writing for kids, because of how simple it had to be, but also had to be engaging, was the hardest kind of writing he'd ever done. And he's always said, if you can do this kind of writing, you can do any kind of writing, which I always found to be, a kind of a heartening sentiment. So
there you go. Nice.
That's awesome.
So on Nick Jr., you wrote some episodes of Gaga Island, Blue's Clues, and Allegra's Window. Can you talk a bit about working on those?
Gullah Gullah Island. I did. I think just.
Yeah, it was one episode.
One or two. Binya's birthday, I think. Was that what it was?
Oh yeah,
it was the parade episode.
The Binya's parade.
Yeah.
Binya's parade. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it's been a very, very long time since I wrote that. But I don't remember much about writing it, except that I believe the head writer was Kermit Frazier, and I liked him a lot. He's a really good guy. He and I are friends on Facebook, and sort of, go back and forth a little bit to this day. My son just started at Syracuse this fall, and
nice.
And that's where Kermit graduated from. So he was on there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I just remember having a really good experience with Kermit, and I feel like anybody named Kermit ought to be in the kids writing business. But he's also a very talented playwright, and writes a lot of other things too. But it was a great experience, and writing on Allegra's Window was a great experience. I wrote with a guy named Jeff Kindley, who's written a ton of kid stuff and was the head writer for JoJo Circus. And
Oh, nice.
the head writer for a bunch of
Nice.
stuff. And Susan Kim, who writes a ton of great kid stuff and who I work with still a lot. And like I say, Barry Harmon and his sister Donna Harmon, who is also a writer on the staff writer on the show. So yeah, those things were great experiences. It's been a really long time. I mean, like I say, the Allegra's Window was my first sort of in the writer's room staff writing experience. I was kind of I guess we were kind of, they didn't really have a writer's room or a staff on The Tick. I don't know if you guys remember The Tick.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, The Tick was a great show. But we sort of we were kind of on the de facto writing staff of The Tick for a little bit. Wrote a few episodes of that around the same time, right before I started working on Bear.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and then Blue's Clues as well, which you
wrote
worked
an
a little
episode.
bit on. Yeah.
I didn't actually. I to this day I do not. It says that I'm credited for a story, and to this day I don't know how that happened or where that came from. I never wrote a single episode of Blue's Clues. I know.
Great job, DB.
Yeah, IMDb.
I don't really know. I guess I could go on there and correct it, but I don't know how that happened.
Let's see
Other
here.
people
Maybe there's another Andy Yerkes out there.
Yeah,
another Andy Yerkes writing for kids.
There's another page. Hold on, I found it. There's another page of it. It actually has the writers on it.
And am I listed?
No.
Yeah.
Well, there you
You're not
go.
listed on it.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. Yeah, it's always been a bit of a mystery to me because like I say, I never wrote for Blue's Clues. It's not really the kind of thing I would want to write for. I had an opportunity to write for Dora, and it just wasn't something I felt like it was really sort of in my wheelhouse because I didn't want to.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't want to just write a bunch of things, obstacles and hey, what do we do now? And you know what I mean? It didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would always want to add something a little bit like, why do we care about going to the castle or wherever we're going? You know what I mean? Why exactly what do we need to get there? You know what I mean? And that wasn't really the thing with that, which I don't object to. I mean, obviously it was a huge success. I know Eric Weiner, I know Chris Gifford, both the guys who were, I think, the credited people for creating Dora.
Yeah.
Both very, very great, very smart guys. But it just wasn't my thing really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know we kind of talked about how you became head writer on Bear. So why don't you take the next question?
It's actually Matt's question.
Or Matt, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode of Bear you wrote?
Oh gosh.
There's so many.
I'm trying to think. I wrote just. I mean, I wrote at least 20. And I'm not. I mean, just the ones that. I mean, as the head writer, I was responsible for rewriting and all of them and breaking the stories and being conceiving the stories with the writers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was involved in every single one of them. But I didn't. I don't know. It's such an interesting question. I mean, I have a real soft spot on my heart for shows like, Home is Where the Bear Is, and I love. I feel like I split a credit with Claudia on a show called Oops, My Mistake, which which is the one where they, I think it's the first appearance of Doc Hogg, maybe. Which Tyler Bunch and I sort of came together to create the character of Doc Hogg.
Nice. We actually previously had.
Okay, hold on. Can I say this? You two previously had. Matt and I were not here.
Yeah, you two did. We'll see. This was
Yeah,
on.
Tyler's amazing. Very, very
Yeah, he's
talented
great.
puppeteer.
I'm still working with Tyler.
Nice.
Tyler's a great puppeteer. He's also a terrific. I don't know if you guys have followed it at all, but he's also a terrific actor, and he does some actual
Oh yeah.
on-camera acting.
Oh yes.
Unlike a lot
Yeah.
of puppeteers, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
also is kind of a genius at like sound effects and voices. And so I brought him in, suggested him both I suggested both him and Peter Linz, who was Tutter, to come in and work on Word World as voices.
Right.
Tyler was the narrator for Word World.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I was I'd got brought into Word World. I don't know why, because for several years I was, and it still happens a bit. I sort of cast in the role of a kind of a Mr. Fix-It when there's a show that's like Pocoyo. That was they had some characters that were really great, and these really talented animators who didn't really know how to make it into a show. And that's what I came in and did. And then same thing, Word World was, kind of floundering. That's a very long story, but Linda Semensky, who was the head of PBS Kids, brought me in to help them with it. And one of the things I added was the narrator, and that's when Tyler got brought in. So, but Tyler and I came up with Doc Hogg, and Tyler's awesome. I love Tyler.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We definitely gotta have him back on.
Yeah, for sure. So me and Matt can meet him.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I want to bring this up because I don't think we haven't mentioned. You also wrote episodes for Arthur and Stanley and Maya McGill. What was that like?
Oh yeah.
I was, I kind of had my, I don't know. I guess I had my stint at Disney where I was basically I was kind of doing everything, where I was I was the head writer for Bear. I was the head writer for Book of Pooh. I was the head writer for Stanley. They asked me to be the head writer for JoJo Circus, but I was honestly kind of, it was very nice and offer, but I was kind of burned out at that point because it had been 7 straight years, kind of without a break, and I just had, I just had my first kid. My daughter was, 18 months old or something, and it was, it was just going to be another long haul, but so I didn't end up doing that, but those, and then I sort of had my stint at PBS where I was doing a lot of stuff for PBS, it was great. I mean, I enjoyed all of it immensely. I mean, I just writing episodic stuff. It's sometimes really nice to do that and to not, and to just write a script, and to not feel, not trying to write scripts when you're responsible for every script. So that's always a fun thing to do. I've been doing that a bit lately with for my friend Craig for Thomas, the Tank Engine, Thomas and Friends, All Engines Go, which is the new iteration of Thomas. And what do you want to know? I mean, it was that stuff. Writing for Stanley, I was the head writer for the last season of Stanley.
Yeah, another show I'm hoping gets put on Disney Plus at some stage.
Yeah, the Great Big Book of Everything. Yes, and it was, Stanley was fun. It was those were great stories. Jeff Kindley, who I mentioned before, had been the head writer on, I think, the 2 seasons before me. I think it was the 3rd season was the last season, and I did like, I forget how many episodes, but it was, it was fun. It was like, it was something different, and it was, I liked the subject matter. I mean, I sort of I've ended up doing quite a few things that have a kind of an environmental, if not text, then subtext. Mama Mirabelle always had a kind of a low-key kind of environmental message for kids. As did Stanley. Stanley was about animals, obviously. I enjoyed doing that. And there was another thing I did more recently that is, I don't know if you guys saw, which is the show on Discovery called Hello World, which aired which aired for a little bit, but it was a family show.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a primetime family show for them that was a bunch of nature documentaries, wildlife docs, basically, that were narrated by pop stars and rock stars. So that was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you have a favorite bear character in song?
Song?
Yeah, or character.
You know, what I remember a couple of things. I remember the Dear Grandma Flutter song.
Yes.
Oh,
And
Amazing song.
yeah, and I remember what's the song in, I think I wrote this episode, but it was really like I was the person who really sort of championed it and wanted to do it, was the episode about being a boy. What was it called? It was Tutter. It was the one where Tutter was Tutter the Great, and he had the, Sir Tutter the Great. He was like a knight, and he had the cheese grater that he wore as his armor.
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be
Boys
boys.
will be boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's a song in that one, if I'm not mistaken, that I really like.
Oh yeah. Oh boy, I think is the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then wow. As far as favorite characters go, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's like it's a hard thing to answer, but but I do remember just the first day I walked in, the first place we shot Bear was at basically at Kaufman Astoria Studios, the same place where they shoot Sesame Street and in Queens, and I walked in and saw the bear standing there for the first time, and I was just honestly blown away, because it was like being in the room with a sort of cartoon character come to life. It was such a, Paul Andreyko was the guy who created Bear. And I believe, and he was involved in creating almost all the puppets on Bear. But he was the one who created the Bear puppet.
Oh, cool.
And it was, I was just like, how is this possible? It was a really amazing moment. And I've always loved Bear. All the characters. I mean, Tutter's obviously a big favorite. Pip and Pop, I adore. I like. I always liked JoJo too. And I mean, what can you say? And I have a soft spot in my heart for Doc Hogg, since I was
creator.
I was
Co-creator of that character.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I was involved in sort of creating a lot of the sort of the personalities of those characters, just because of having to, I was the one who was, steering the writing, and the kind of jokes they did, the way that they, the way, Tutter was nervous, and, just, Bear's patience and his parental sort of thing, all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I have a soft spot in my heart for Doc Hogg. It's such a great puppet too, and Tyler does such a great job with him.
Yeah, and Luna, amazing.
Luna's great. Yeah,
you worked with Lynn Thigpen. What was that like?
Lynn, I never actually, because Lynn recorded her dialogue in a recording studio, and I never.
Oh, wow.
That was like a separate thing. We got her track, and then it was Peter Linz who operated the Luna puppet.
Mm-hmm.
And he, and they would, he would just sync it up to whatever her track was.
Yeah.
Same thing with, what's his name? The great actor, the great Caribbean actor who played Ray.
Jeffrey Holder.
Holder. Yeah. All of this was done. All of his stuff was done in a recording studio, and a lot of people who sort of obviously that we had a lot of guest stars that came
Yeah.
in, like Whoopi Goldberg,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
sort of,
Yeah.
and Brad Garrett, and
Yeah.
people like that, and those people were obviously not puppeteers. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
right. Yeah. So
There you
yeah,
go.
I mean, I don't. It would be really hard for me to pick a favorite character on Bear. I mean, if I had to, if you put a gun to my head, I'd say Bear.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all those guys. So,
Yes.
I know you mentioned, of course, Tyler, but is there anyone else you still keep in touch with from Bear?
Oh yeah, Peter Lurie. I'm still in touch
Amazing
with
guy.
Peter. I still exchange, messages sometimes on social media with Brian Woodbury.
Amazing.
I'm very much in contact a lot with Noel.
Nice.
Neil.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love Noel.
Noel and Noel's wife just had she's published many novels, and they're very
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
saw that.
And I've actually used Noel on several shows as a writer.
Mhm.
Wow.
And Noel is Noel is every bit as,
Yeah.
he's basically Bear,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you just kind of got to love him, I mean, have you guys ever interviewed him?
I have
I did
not.
I did on the
Chris
DJ Bob show. We haven't had him on this one yet.
Matt
met
met
him.
him.
We'd love to, though. I'd love to
Yeah.
talk to
Met
him.
him also.
He's fantastic. He's a great guy.
Really?
And let me think. I'm trying to think who else. Well, the writers, that I worked with are on Bear still. I still am in contact with all of those people.
Nice.
Geez. Rick Fernandez, who was the
We had
producer.
him on.
we actually
We had
had
him
him
on
on
as
too.
well.
That was a recent guest.
Rick and I are scheduled to have coffee together at some point in the very near future.
Nice.
Oh wow.
And his wife Erica,
Nice.
who was also a producer on the show,
Nice.
and an editor
Wow.
and an editor too.
Nice.
Yeah,
So many people.
lots of people. Yeah,
There you go.
it was a nice experience.
Great
Generally
people
speaking.
do not be a
Yeah,
part
and I
of
will
the
say
show,
this:
you know?
we mentioned Mitchell, but we actually previously had Mitchell on as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They did.
Mitchell.
Yeah, we did.
Mitchell and I don't really talk so much anymore. So.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. If Bear were to come back for a revival or a reboot, would you want to return?
That's an interesting question and a very complicated one. But I would love to work on Bear again. It would just depend. It would depend wholly on what the situation was.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and what the, and whether it was going to be true to what everybody
to the
loves
OG.
about it.
Original.
Yeah.
What everybody loved about Bear, and obviously there's some some new stuff that can be done, and we did it, like when we sort of introduced the wider Woodland Valley. We did some sort of CG stuff, and and some and some of that kind of stuff a bit more. So yeah, I mean that would be fun to do. I mean, that was I just remember after the first season, I don't know, the first season was completely, unless I'm getting my, I kind of did it all almost without a break,
Oh wow.
So like when things happened, whether this was season one, but it was most of the first season where we were just completely stuck in the house. And I begged and begged and begged, and and we eventually got for season 2, I think that's how it worked, was the outer pond, some outdoor space.
Yeah.
Right.
And which was great. And just watching them sort of create that, and also, there was a real water in there, and the otters, there were otter puppets that were waterproofed, and so they could swim in the otter pond, and it was fun.
Awesome.
And added another dimension to the show, because you can't, once you've done 26 episodes of people stuck in a house, you start to feel a little bit,
Yeah.
not animals, puppets, not people, but
Yeah.
characters, it starts to get a little claustrophobic once you want to be able to sort of just get out in the air a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it should come back for the people, the new generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And original fans.
I know, it's I think it's complex with I know that Disney bought the bear, when they bought the Muppets.
Right. Yeah.
They bought the Muppets, but they didn't buy the Sesame Street Muppets. They just bought the Muppet Show Muppets, and they also bought Bear. Those characters. Yeah. So, it really is, it's not even a Henson thing at this point. It's only I'm sure they would want, Henson to be involved in, I would think it would just be smart to have Henson involved in some way, but it was, it's just sort of, it's really up to Disney.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it all depends on how well the show does on Disney Plus, which I don't even, and I don't even know what those, they keep those metrics pretty secret on most of the streaming services. So, but yeah, it would be great. It would be great. It would just be, it would be,
it just depends.
It just really depends on a lot of things. Yeah.
If we're able to get Bear on Disney Plus, hopefully we can get the spinoff, because I know some of the episodes are missing online.
Yeah, okay, Breakfast with Bear.
Yeah. Breakfast with Bear. Yeah, Breakfast with Bear. It was just, I believe Breakfast with Bear was just sort of an interstitial thing, for introducing other shows.
That's right.
So it may not be something that really fits with where, or maybe it is. I don't know. I was
no.
they negotiated with me to do Breakfast with Bear, but it didn't work out. So so Kevin, I think Kevin Strader ended up writing those things. But and I was obviously very busy too. So but it was I've never even seen. I know it was like the morning block of shows that Bear sort of hosted.
Right.
But I never really. I think by then my kids had aged out, and I was not going to, I didn't sit down and watch Disney Junior. And Bear was no longer on. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other, also forgot to mention the show that you're also a part of, which is Jungle Junction. What's it that like doing that show?
Well, Jungle Junction was another one of these shows that I got brought into to sort of fix, and it was a show that was created by this group of people in England. It was actually created by this guy, and I'm gonna completely have a stroke and blank on his name, but it's he worked with this animation company, Spider Eye, that was in Cornwall in England, and it was when you get sort of like forced onto their show and are told this guy's going to fix your show, it's it can be rough going, especially because just the fact that they're being told that what they're trying to do, what they're doing is not working, and it needs to be fixed by someone who's going to be brought in and sort of forced down their throats. And I for a while had a really nice time on Jungle Junction, but it was also at a kind of a difficult junction in my life.
I get it.
And there was stuff going on in my life, and I was, I was short of patience. And I probably, didn't behave as well as I could have. It happens. Especially when you're in a situation like that, because what I always say about that is that when you do come in and are brought in to fix something, there's a lot of resistance. And then if you do fix it, if basically everybody at PBS or Disney goes, great, this is so much better. Oh my gosh, we really love it now. Then everybody that you're working with loves you for like 10 minutes and then just wants you to like dissolve, disappear, die, be gone. Because now that it's fixed,
Yeah.
you know, they don't want you around as a reminder of the fact of who fixed it. You know, and that's been my experience. Sometimes I've had great experiences working on, you know, being brought into shows like on Pocoyo with the guys in Spain, the guys in Madrid that were the animators on Pocoyo, Zinkia. I had just a fantastic experience with them. I had to really fight for it, and I had to really sort of fight to meet them and say, I want to collaborate with these guys. I don't want to like be, you know, I don't want this to be. But so often when you're working on an animated show, the writing and the animation is completely separated.
Yeah.
And the shows that I've worked on where that wasn't the case, where there was, you know, some real sort of good, just a connection between the writers and the animators, where the writers brought the animators in to talk about the stories and the animators brought the writers in to talk about the stuff that was happening. It just turned out so much better. I mean, and Pocoyo is for me the most sort of shining example of that, because that's a show that, like, without the writer, without myself and, you know, as the writer and the animation company sort of standing together about what we wanted, it would have been much more difficult to do. They wanted Pocoyo to be a much more elaborate kind of world with, you know, all sorts of, you know, with so they could make play sets. Bandai was the toy company, and they wanted to make play sets with like forests and houses and trees, and we were just like, no, this is, you know, this is better. You know, this sort of very simple world was, because we had this idea about it, I had this idea really about it being this sort of a kind of a metaphor almost for the inside of a kid's head. In a similar way to like the world of Pooh is like, you know, the imaginary world of this kid and his toys.
Right.
I sort of thought of Pocoyo like that. And I always thought of Pocoyo. I mean, I was going to say earlier, you guys asked about my inspirations for this kind of stuff. You know, I just loved classic cartoons growing up, and I love stories. You know, I loved something that had a story that took you through a beginning, middle, and end, and had a payoff. You know, and when I was a kid, you know, the Saturday morning cartoons were, you know, they weren't as sophisticated, probably. I mean, some of them were incredibly sophisticated from an animation perspective, but you know, some of them were just like, you know, but they were written, and they were stories, and they were, you know, they had real comedy and real jokes, and I always had a real, you know, a real sort of love of that, and you know, I mean, and that's what I brought to Pocoyo. When I first was writing on Pocoyo, I brought all the writers together, and we sat for an entire day and watched Charlie Chaplin shorts, like the, you know, Charlie Chaplin short films, because I mean, Charlie Chaplin was really the first cartoon character. Everything, you know, everything else is sort of based on him. Yeah. And I always thought of Pocoyo as the sort of toddler Charlie Chaplin.
There you go.
And that's what I based it on. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Sure.
So, so how does it feel then, you know, next month, you know, October 19th, Bear will be available to stream on Disney Plus for both its original and any upcoming new fans? You know,
yeah.
fans
well,
too.
I mean, I'm really happy that, you know, that a show like Bear, which I feel like has, you know, its heart is so in the right place, and it's so like, you know, I think that kind of gentleness, that kind of kindness, that kind of, you know, the sort of empathy that's exhibited in Bear and the characters and the emotion, is, you know, and the sort of social stuff, all of that stuff is really, really valuable right now. I mean, I think it's you know, COVID has created an entire generation of young kids, I think, that are that missed out on so much as far as their socialization and their and I think Bear is a kind of a great, it's one of the it just has, I just think Bear has a sort of a great spirit behind it, and it's one of those shows where you go, oh yeah, this is actually gonna, kid will watch this, and maybe they'll take something from it,
Yeah, because it's calming and soothing, and it teaches educational stuff, and it's not like too in your face like certain kids shows nowadays are.
Right. I think for me, I think it teaches you about friendship and patience and doing for others and just general sort of rules of thumb and ways of sort of navigating the kid experience, in a very mild and gentle and warm way. So yeah. I mean, I'm excited that a new generation of kids will get to watch Bear.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah.
And see what was so special to us when we were little, watching the show on Disney. And
See what their reactions when they see it.
Definitely.
Definitely. It'll be interesting,
So in addition to Bear, you were a writer and story editor on the Book of Pooh. What was it like working on that?
Well, that was for Mitchell as well. I mean, I ended up doing, there were all told, I think 100, not 200, 111-minute episodes of Pooh, roughly, and 117 episodes of Bear, and that was across like 6 or 7 years. And so it was 200 and, almost 220 episodes of TV that I did with Mitchell. I mean, I loved working on Book of Pooh because it was I loved sort of writing those characters in that sort of A.A. Milne speak, the sort of clever way that they spoke, and the sort of, and Book of Pooh had a kind of a literacy curriculum underneath it, so I appreciated that. I thought that was a very worthy thing to be doing, and those characters are just really fun to write, and it's like they obviously so well established, but it was an interesting challenge to sort of write a show that had a literacy curriculum that also stayed true to Milne and to the sort of voice that Walt Disney had sort of originally created in those first Winnie the Pooh shorts, which I loved as a kid too, and I was just always very conscious of trying to keep it, even though it was obviously this whole new sort of thing with these Bunraku puppets, shot on green screen, and this sort of thing that Mitchell developed, which was the shadowmation, which was putting puppets on a I mean, I don't know if you know about that process of the Book of Pooh was shot in, but it was a completely CG 100-acre wood.
Right.
But it was also like, it wasn't added in after. It was a CG 100-acre wood that was completely built, and the puppeteers would be on stage in their suits, completely,
all the green like suits, and
like and like two or at least 2 or 3 puppeteers on each puppet, because they're walking, and the hands and the head, and then what you actually saw on the monitors, though, while it was being shot, were the characters in the 100-acre wood. And it was kind of, it was on the fly. It was live action. It was a virtual set that actually, reflected, that was the 100-acre wood, as we were shooting it. So when Pooh was walking along, he was walking along through the 100-acre wood, and that's what got recorded. So it was really fascinating, and it was cool, and it was like, just trying to stay true to the spirit of Pooh, also, get to these sort of like, early literacy things, and, with the challenges of the technology, which was brand new. It was interesting.
There you go.
Nice. So another show I wanted to bring up that I hope it's true that you worked on. I hope IMDb is not lying about it. Is Maya and Miguel.
Yeah,
Right.
I mentioned that
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I wrote like 5 episodes of Maya and Miguel. And it was interesting. It was sort of at the height of Bear in the Big Blue House's, place in the, time in the sun. Everybody was very, very high on Bear. Bear was, been nominated for awards and gotten a lot of good reviews, and et cetera, et cetera. And so yeah, they kind of, the people, it was Scholastic that did it. And it was the head writer was a guy named John Greenberg, who was a great guy, and he's also a college professor. And he so I got brought in as sort of a, and was like in like publicity stuff for it, like the writer there in the Big Blue House, and Adam Peltzman, who was the the writer of Blue's Clues. We were both sort of
Wow.
featured.
Yeah.
And I wrote like 5 episodes of it. It was and it was great. Honestly, it was a really great experience. It was kind of a lot like writing for Arthur, in that it was a
Arthur Quiz show.
Amazing show, what you did.
Yeah. Peter Hirsch is an old friend of mine, and a person that we've worked with each other, and he's written for stuff, and I've written for stuff, obviously Arthur for him.
Nice.
And Maya and Miguel was a lot like that, because it was an almost sort of like a sitcom format. I mean, you could do real stories with characters, and do real jokes, and
Yeah.
I had a great time. I loved those characters. I liked writing for it. I was proud of those episodes, which is not always to find, after having done this as long as I have. It's not all, you don't always feel like it's the case. You don't always have a great experience. You're not always proud of what, you're able to, I mean, you try, but there are often so many concerned parties, and so many people that have an opinion, that it often gets turned into sort of a mishmash. But that was not the case. That was not the case with Maya and Miguel. Like it's not the case with Arthur, and it wasn't the case with a lot of stuff I was very fortunate to work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Arthur, we actually previously had Daniel Brochu, who was voice of Buster.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was nice.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Really nice.
I know there was, just all I remember about Buster, really. I mean, I obviously have written for Buster, but like the big thing I remember was the whole scandal, the big controversy about his 2 moms.
Oh yeah, the Postcards from Buster episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Postcards from Buster. Yeah. Which I had no role in. I think Peter Hirsch also was on Postcards from Buster.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Definitely.
It's awesome. So, do you have any funny or interesting behind the scenes stories from your career as a writer?
Fun or interesting behind the scenes stories? Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it was always fun, but it's always like, what we do behind the scenes is like, is like, especially on kids shows, where we often, we often make inappropriate jokes. And do inappropriate things to sort of, like, remind ourselves that we're adults. I just remember, like we came up with this whole thing where, like, I forget which episode it was. Maybe it was the fall episode, maybe Falling for Fall, which I wrote, but I'm trying to think. But like, we dressed Kevin Strader up. The other, Kevin was one of the writers on Bear, in like a kind of almost Elmer Fudd like some hunter costume. And while they were shooting an episode of Bear, he just with a rifle kind of like crept over and appeared at the window behind the swing, like, a human hunter had arrived at the Big Blue House. Whatever.
That's
We
amazing.
just messed around, made jokes, and the puppeteers made some hilarious jokes that when they were
Especially if they mess it up or something.
right. There's a great sort of gag reel somewhere of all of them all doing wildly inappropriate things and making when they screw up and just crazy stuff. And those people are all very funny, all the puppeteers, and we were constantly sort of feeding into one another. They would do something on stage often that we didn't even we'd write something and they'd maybe start interacting with something. Like I remember vaguely Tutter interacting with a balloon, probably on the birthday episode or something, and just his his struggles with the balloon as a puppet were so funny that we wrote it into the show. We wrote things like that where we would write things into the show that we saw them doing. And they obviously they would take stuff that we wrote and go with it. There's a lot of stuff that we wrote, or there's some stuff at least that we wrote that didn't make it into the show because it was seen as too sort of Sesame Street humor, or like, like older humor sometimes that we tried to put in. I know there was some bits that I wrote for the Mistakes episode when they were trying to get a hold of Doc Hogg and they kept getting the wrong. Lois kept connecting them to the wrong number. That were like, no, that's too funny. Can't do that.
Yeah, can't do that on kids. For kids show.
Yeah. How many times can you rhyme? Try to rhyme things with Doc Hogg, and so that. I did something which all the puppeteers loved called Shrimps in a Fog, which was just a bunch of shrimp. We had these shrimp puppets. They were all in a boat and lost in a fog. And and it was just this hilarious bit of them answering the phone on their boat and being like, no, and it's like, never mind, wrong number, keep rowing. It was just silly fun stuff. We had a good time. We did. I had a good time in the writer's room, and obviously the performers were all very nice. But it was, it was a long haul. There's a lot to be done. So
definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Definitely. So here's another interesting question. Do you have any memorabilia or anything from your work with you that you'd like to show
or talk about?
Memorabilia.
Like anything from Bear.
Gosh, I don't.
It's fine if you don't.
I don't really have. I mean, I've got a ton of scripts
that
are still sort of sitting around in my hard drive. I used to have. You guys are probably gonna, I had a box that was about yay high, a cardboard box filled with with every show on VHS that I eventually just got rid of because it was just taking up space and the tapes were, getting sort of musty and, going back, the days of VHS are gone. I didn't even, at the point where I got rid of it, I didn't even have a VCR anymore.
Oh, I mean, hey, with Bear coming to streaming, there's really not a point anymore
exactly.
anyway.
Right. I could, I could just,
what you do?
You can play them whenever you want.
You act out the episodes, but play by play since you have the scripts when they're on Disney Plus.
Is this an interview or a football game, Wyatt? I don't know.
That's fine.
Yeah. Right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I had a show jacket. I think my ex-wife has the Bear in the Big Blue House tote bag somewhere. I had hats, which are somewhere like a baseball hat with Bear on it somewhere around here. Nice. Lots of stuff like that. But I was never the kind of person who would really wear a show jacket. With an embroidered cartoon character on my back. It wasn't really my style. So, but that's probably somewhere. I mean, I can't believe that I would have actually gotten rid of that. I think it's probably in a box somewhere. you know.
Yeah. There you
yeah.
go. So,
Nice.
so we talked about a lot about your work in the past. Is there anything you're working on now that you can share?
That I can share. Well, I can maybe cautiously share a couple of things. I'm in the process of creating a show for Slinky.
Oh, nice.
You know, the
Nice.
Slinky toy, like a kid's
Oh,
show.
cool.
Yeah. I'm a partner in a company that is something called Rally Cry, which is creating content for kids that is sports
Yeah.
and sports team based, and that's sort of ongoing. I have been writing. I've written several live stage shows. I don't know if you
nice.
guys. I wrote the second Bear live stage show.
Oh,
The
that's
first
cool.
Wow.
first time for
Nice.
everything that was
Nice.
like toured the country, and then I think played in at Disney World for a while. And then I also wrote the Stanley live stage show called Show and Tell Shark.
Oh,
That was
nice.
many years ago, but now I'm writing a live stage show for a company called Go Noodle, which is like an online streaming company that has a bunch of characters and and does sort of wellness and movement for kids, and started out as a sort of a thing that was in classrooms, but now I'm doing a live stage show for them. Let's see, well, what else? Gosh, I think that's it right now. That's sort of about it.
There you go.
Nice.
Okay.
I didn't even know they had a Stanley live show. I know he was in Playoffs Disney
Yeah.
Live on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had
Maybe
a
I
Stanley
knew.
live show. I don't, I did take my kids to see the Bear live show
Oh, nice.
when it was touring, but I never went to see the Stanley live show. But I had a very nice experience working on it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot wait for work that's gonna be come out soon, which I'm very excited for that.
Same.
yeah,
So
well, here's hoping. Yeah,
especially the Slinky, show that's
That's interesting.
Yeah.
great character.
yeah,
Slinky Dog, yeah. Toy Story.
Yeah.
Sure.
yeah.
Toy
Slinky Dog will be a
Story
character
movie.
in that. So,
Oh, wow.
but also a variety of other characters that sort of live in a Slinky-based world. So
Nice.
It'd be cool to get
Yeah.
the voice of Slinky in the future, hopefully, because I know who he is.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That'd be
yeah,
cool.
yeah, we'll see.
Who
It's sort
knows?
of it's early days. I'm just writing the pilot. So yeah.
Nice. Nice. Really nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what do you enjoy most about your work today?
What do I enjoy most about my work today? You mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, wow. Well, I do a lot of, I mean, I sort of get to switch back and forth. I mean, I guess the thing that I enjoy most is just being able to do this stuff, and also being able to do the stuff that I want to do, which is, work on pieces of fiction, work on other pieces, for film and stuff like that, which, for many years, right now I have more of an opportunity to do that. For many years, I had like, I was just so wall to wall with writing for the kids stuff that it was very difficult to do anything else. And I mean, I'm still very busy, but I'm been able to find some time to do stuff like that. So that's great too. I mean, the satisfactions of doing this are the same as they've always been. I'm just always very happy and satisfied to come up with a story that works, that has some sort of impact, and
There you go.
has something to say, even if it's something small and simple and sort of kid driven. That's always been my satisfaction with this work, is just trying to make a story as good as it can be.
Definitely.
Yeah.
As a writer, what
Awesome.
challenges would you say you faced in your career?
Well, I mean, the challenges with the kids writing are are kind of, it's a person who didn't really have any. I mean, I had a lot of love for a lot of kids literature and comic books and kids TV as a kid, but I never really. It wasn't something I aspired to do at all. I just sort of got asked into it, which is very lucky for me.
Yeah.
But the challenges for me were always like, okay, well, here's the joke that ideally I would do in this situation,
Mm-hmm.
but what, but I can't do that joke. What joke or what version of that joke can I do that will actually work for kids? What version of this story can we do that will work for kids, and that won't be, traumatizing like how far can we go? That's always the thing about writing for kids, is that you're, as an adult, and especially from where I came to it, it was like the natural instinct was to go, then you always had to reel yourself back a bit, which I actually think is probably the best place to come at kids TV, because you don't end up with stuff that's sort of like, this treacle where it's just smiley, la la la. It has a little bit of something. I think it's what people like about Bear, which was that, there was like, not like there was a real edge to Bear, but there was always the idea that Bear was had to be patient came through, in a way that I remember working very early on a show, and I won't say which show and I won't say for what company, but I was told, one of the first things I was told was that there can be no conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember another, and there is no story. There was no story without some form of conflict, and conflict not meaning, people, sort of resorting to blows or yelling at each other, whatever, but something, an obstacle, something rubbing up against something else that makes something difficult, or a person that a relationship that you're trying to figure out, or and that was a sort of like, I come up against that time and time again, this sort of thing where people don't, no conflict. I once was writing, I said I wanted to write a story about honesty, and again, I won't say what show this was for, but it was and the educational advisors specifically were like, oh, that's great, we love that idea, just as long as nobody tells a lie.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the thing is that there's not really a story in people wandering around just being honest with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You can't write a story that's about the necessity for honesty without having someone at least flirt with dishonesty.
Right.
Because it doesn't work. There's just nothing, there's nothing to it. There's no story. It's just people saying, hey, it's great to be honest. Let's be honest with each other. Ooh, the end. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So, that's the kind of thing. If I had to point to any, I mean, that kind of thing is the biggest kind of challenge that I have faced, honestly. Dealing with that, that sort of attitude, and sort of underestimating kids in a kind of infuriating way.
Yeah. So for anyone who wants to get into writing as their like a profession or career, what piece of advice would you give to anyone who wants to get into that field?
Well, I get that question a lot. I get approached.
Oh, wow.
I also, like, on LinkedIn and Facebook, people are like friends of my, or people that like graduated from the same high school as me, but like 15 or 20 years later, are like, can I, do you have time to talk to so and so, or talk to me about how you got into kids writing and what what you suggest? For me, it's really difficult because, like I say, it's not like I had any intention to go and do that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just writing. I mean, and so, I was writing for theater. I was writing for myself. I was involved in a group of writers, and something that I had written got seen by people who ran Jumbo Pictures, and
Right.
we're like, oh, we want that guy to come and do some stuff for us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Right.
sure, you're gonna pay me to write some stuff. Great, that'll be, you know, a nice supplement to my income as a, you know, as a speechwriter, which is what I was doing then. And so it's hard for me. I mean, the only thing I can say to people is that want to get involved in writing is to write and write the stuff that you're interested in, see where it goes, try to get something going with it, you know, like write a piece of theater, or write a piece of prose, or and read it in public, or, you know, get actors to read it. Where do all you guys, are you all guys, are you all in the New York area, or where do you all
No.
live?
No,
No.
I'm in Massachusetts.
I'm in Ohio.
And me and
Okay.
Matt live in Maryland.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's like one of the things that I did when I was, you know, just writing stuff. I was in a writers group that ended up, you know, having a, you know, about a lot of pretty successful writers came out of it, and there were only about 6 of us, but everybody ended up doing some kind of, you know, interesting stuff, including Ken Lonergan, who won an Oscar, a friend of mine, Frank Pugliese, who was the showrunner on House of Cards, and, you know, and other things, and, you know, just Nicole Burdett, who wrote movies and plays, and it's a terrific writer. Just all the people that were there became professional writers. But like having that kind of a support system and doing something and trying to you know, if all else fails, what we did was we created something called Tuesdays at 9, which was a reading series, and we just did it to sort of get people to come in and read our work out loud, actors, if we were writing theatrical stuff, or, you know, even I was writing a lot of prose then, so, you know, actors would come in and read as the character in the story that I was writing, or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
what my point is, the suggestion is, like, you know, go and, like, we created this, and it got a lot of, you know, it got a lot of attention. And today, Tuesdays at 9 is in like a bunch of cities all over the country. It was this the theater company, Naked Angels, again, and there's like Tuesdays at 9 LA, Tuesdays at 9 Chicago, Tuesdays at 9 New York. I don't know if there's one in Boston, but like, my point being, you know, start doing stuff. If you want to write for something, you know,
Yes.
if you have a, you know, write something in the genre or the form that you're interested in writing, and you know, put it out in the world. That's the way to get into it. That's the way I got into it.
There you go.
For sure.
Completely by accident, but yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, what would you like to say to supporters of your work?
Fans
Say that
also.
again.
What would
Say
you
that
like
again.
what would you like to say to the fans and supporters of your work?
Well, you know, thank you. You know, I mean, it's greatly appreciated, and it's nice. It's kind of the nicest thing, you know. I mean, I talk about the satisfactions of, you know, getting a story to where you want it, but like, then another great satisfaction of this work is having people go, wow, that's great, or, you know, I really appreciate that, or, you know, that, you know, really helped me, or that's something I think about a lot, you know, or you know, helped to potty train my kid, you know what I mean? Like, you know, that kind of stuff is just always really welcome. There's an interesting thing that we found out when we were working on Bear, which was that they were looking at the sort of stats, and I don't know even where they got this from, but like, the group that was, you know, that Bear was like the most popular with, interestingly, or was incredibly popular with, at the very least, was women in prison.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is, you know, first you go, what? But then you kind of think, well, in prison, they don't really let you watch much. Nothing really too provocative or adult or violent, or, you know, or in any way sexual, because, you know, that doesn't really, it's not really helpful when you're in prison, any of this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because you know, and it's not helpful to anybody involved in the whole, you know, prison system. So a lot of what they end up watching is kid stuff. And and Bear, you know, and a lot of these women who are in prison have children out in the foster system or with their, what, you know, presumably with the father of their kids. And Bear was a sort of a great single dad who was incredibly patient and kind and taking really good care of these kids in his house. So
Definitely.
that was really interesting and really, and kind of really gratifying in a way. You know what I mean? Because it was like, it was just like, yeah, you know, somebody's taking something really comforting away from this show.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of describing Bear.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
That's awesome.
Definitely.
absolutely. And if people would like to contact you, where can people find you?
Where can they find me?
Where are you at on social media and stuff like that?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, put his links in the description for everybody.
It's the first time anybody's ever mentioned LinkedIn, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
I think
Yeah.
you're the first. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a cookie.
What?
Oh.
I'm kidding.
Anyway, to finish this off, so of course this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
Oh, well, you know, there was a time when I would have thought of nostalgia as a sort of, you know, the cornfields and, you know, baseball and basketball games of, you know, and you know, neighborhood, you know, shenanigans and the 4th of Julys of my childhood, but and Christmas, obviously. But I don't know, you know, once I, you know, now that I've had children and they're both now college students, it's like, you know, nostalgia takes on a whole new thing. And I think I'll think a lot back to my daughter, who's, you know, for instance, she's a senior in college, and you know, she was like, I remember her when she was probably 2, having, you know, coming on the Bear set and having a set visit, having all of the characters and having all of the characters sort of come and, you know, take this, you know, really take time and talk to her and, you know, give this little girl this great experience that she loved Bear.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, now she's 21. She's 21.
Oh wow.
And she recently got a tattoo. I think she's a visual artist and a painter and an amazing artist.
Oh, nice.
You know, all on her own. But she last year spent a whole semester in Florence, Italy.
Wow.
In you know, doing art and, you know, painting and sort of being taught by these Florentine painters and these people and blah blah blah. So she had a great time, and she got it while she was there. She got a tattoo, which was I don't know how familiar you guys are with Pocoyo. I think somebody said that it was the show that
I grew up
we're
with
most familiar with.
Yeah, me too.
Well, my favorite episode of Pocoyo is an episode that I was like determined to get done, and I had to fight for it. It was one of these episodes where like, well, you know, no. And it was the episode. And if you go on to, it's the episode called "The Key to It All," and it's like if you go on YouTube and look at the number of views of any Pocoyo episode, I don't know. Last time I looked, that, you know, there's Pocoyo gets viewed a lot, and any individual episode will have, like, you know, 17 million views, 30 million views, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. This particular episode has 100 and 2 versions of it. One has like 180 million views, and I think one has now like 190 million views.
Wow.
So, and
I looked it up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's this particular episode, The Key to It All. And it was my episode, and it was an episode I was determined to do. And it's about, you kind of have to watch it. I won't do the whole thing. It's only 5 minutes long, but it's kind of about, it's not about the goal or the treasure that you're after. It's about the journey.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's about being in the now and having the experience that you have and having the adventure that you have along the way. And the tattoo that she got was the key from that episode.
Oh, nice.
Oh wow.
So that was
awesome.
like, if any sort of any fan compliment that I've ever gotten, that one from my daughter, having that tattooed on her wrist was the greatest thing. You know,
that's amazing.
you know, if she had to get a tattoo, the key from Pocoyo was one that I could, you know, at least marginally accept. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
And I did also want to ask, like, how does it feel that, you know, your work has, you know, become like Bear and Pocoyo and, you know, the other things too, like that those shows became such huge successes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly gratifying. It's really like to see that there were these petitions to get Bear on Disney Plus, you know, to see
and
that,
now it is. Yeah.
and now it is.
Nice.
And now it is. The fans, you know, sort of demanded it. And it's you know, it's just a feeling of like, you know, in life, you just sort of hope that you make some sort of impression, you know. I mean, that's what else can you really hope for? And, you know, my parents were both teachers, and I was just always astounded. I would, you know, I traveled all around with them, and there were always people who you'd hear when I was in Italy with my dad. Somebody was like, "Mr. Yerkes, you know, what are you, you know, hey, you know, what are you doing in Italy, you know?" And it was like just people knew because he had touched so many lives being a teacher for 30 years.
Right.
That, you know, that those people were just diaspora. They were everywhere, you know.
Definitely.
And the idea of, and I thought that was so great. And the idea of just like making an impression or having something memorable in some, you know, being a part of something memorable in someone's life is just, you know, what else do you really want? You know?
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a blast.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Nice to chat.
Thank you.
We'll definitely keep in touch, and hopefully we can have somebody from Bear on with you in the future if you're up for coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think, you know, I mean, are we still recording?
Yeah.
Well, this is gonna be cut off anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're just about anybody would be fine. They're you know, I think you'll find that there are some people who won't want to be in a conversation with me.
You know, dude, we'll have Tyler Bunch on. Yeah, that would work perfect.
I know why you're saying that too.
This is fun. I'll message you once this episode or interview goes up.
And we'll send you the photo as well.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You know, thank you so much.
You are worth it
for your work, being part of our childhoods, and you know, keep up your good work. And Cameron, what's next for you?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being interested.
Thank you, and everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you, Andy.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
See you, Andy.
Bye, Andy.
Bye, Andy.
Bye.
Well, everybody, that brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. Remember, Bear in the Big Blue House will be streaming on Disney Plus October 19th. I'm pretty sure by the time this episode comes out, it'll already be on Disney Plus.
It might be.
Yeah.
Honestly, by the time this comes out, it'll probably have been on Disney Plus for a while.
Yeah. But
anyway,
just go watch it anyway.
Go watch it anyway.
Because we definitely will be. I'm planning on binge watching it as soon as it comes out.
I will too.
Aren't we all?
Yes, definitely. Well, anyway.
Anyone. Anyway.
That's the things we should cut off.
Edit point. Anyway, that brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. Thanks again, Andy Yerkes. We enjoyed talking a lot with him. And remember, everyone, you're worth it. And stay nostalgic.
Stay nostalgic.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
See you next time on another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Be sure to follow us on social media and stream us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember that you are worth it and to always stay nostalgic. Bye-bye.